This regular Medicine Hat City Council meeting is called to order at 6:30 p.m. on November 10th, 2025. We will begin with a moment for prayer or reflection. The City of Medicine Hat acknowledges that we live and work on treaty territory. The city pays respect to all Indigenous peoples and honors their past, present, and future. We recognize and respect their cultural heritages and relationship to the land. Adoption of previous council meeting minutes. First up, we have regular council meeting minutes dated October 6th, 2025. Any errors or omissions? Councillor Clugston?
I think this is a unique situation where none of us were there other than yourself. And I don't know that it would be appropriate for any of us to second or move it.
I don't disagree. What do you propose, City Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So typically you can just speak into the record that you have no objections to it and just adopt it as presented.
Okay, well, since no one was there, I will take that there's no objections and we will adopt it for the corporate record. Item 4.2, regular council meeting minutes, October 10th, 2025. And 4.3, that was also prior to this council. So I will assume there's no objections and we will adopt them for the corporate record. 4.3, organizational council meeting minutes, November 3rd, 2025. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we will adopt them for the corporate record. It doesn't look like we have a place for council announcement. Okay, thank you. So it's, okay, councilor announcements. We'll do adoption of the agenda first. Does anyone have any additions or objections to the agenda? Hearing none, we will adopt the agenda. Councilor announcements. Does anyone have a councilor announcement? I have a couple. We received a message from Edward Devine regarding the crosswalk that was put in place from City Hall to Riverside Park, Veterans Memorial Park. He says, "Dear Mayor Clark and Council, on behalf of all the veterans of Medicine Hat, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for attending and speaking at the opening of the Veterans Sidewalk opposite City Hall. Your presence was greatly appreciated. Please pass on my sincere thanks to all members of council who voted for the sidewalk in the September 2025 council meeting. Both I and the veterans in attendance appreciated all the hard work that was put in by you and your staff at City Hall to have this completed very swiftly and in time for Remembrance Day 2025. I have also taken the time to personally write to the relevant departments within City Hall, passing on both my thanks and that of my fellow veterans. Once again, thank you for assisting me in highlighting the veterans within Medicine Hat, both past, present, and future. Kind regards, Edward Devine." And I understand that Tracy Stroud with Apex Regional Innovation Network of Southeast Alberta received a 2025 award Regional Innovation Champions Leadership, Fueling Alberta's Future, Driving Rural Innovation. And that was from the Aztec Awards. So that's quite an honor for her. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Varga.
Just a question. The crosswalk looks great. I'm just wondering if there's going to be an upkeep to it, that we could keep it looking nice all the time. I'm not sure if that's what was in the plans, but I think it looks really well. It looks really good, and I hope we can keep it in tip-top. I know it gets drove over every day many times, but if we can keep it up a little bit, at least it would stay around for a while, if that's possible.
Managing Director Bohan, is that something you're in a position to answer? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. And to Councillor Varga, we'll be taking a look at a couple of things. We'll be looking at what maintenance is required to keep it up, and we'll be bringing forward a bylaw for consideration, for council consideration, early in the new year that will contemplate the various different crosswalk markings that the city is presented with. So that'll be forthcoming in the new year.
Any other announcements? Seeing none. New business. We have one item. It's riveting. It's 6.1, 2026 Budget Council Introduction. And this is sponsored by both the Energy, Land and Environment and Corporate Services Departments. The item is for information only. The first part is going to be presented by Jarrett Dickey, Manager of Corporate Planning and Performance, and Aaron, oh my goodness, Hoymer, Supervisor, Accounting, Corporate Planning and Performance. Mr. Dickey. Oh, sorry, Managing Director Barta, did you want to introduce?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So this presentation is part of Council's introduction session, and it's designed to provide Council with an understanding of the budget framework, the key components that have been included in the 2026 approved budget, additional insights into the city's financial position, as well as an overview of the rate-based and energy production business units. This session is intended to give Council the background and context needed to make informed decisions during the upcoming meetings related to the 2026 budget updates, which will be presented for Council's approval. So I will turn it over to Manager Dickey to walk us through the presentation.
Thank you very much. Manager Dickey, would you prefer that we hold our questions to the end or that people ask questions as they come up?
Great question. I promise it will be riveting. There will be lots of reading because there's a lot of detail as part of this package. That being said, there's sections within the presentation, so there'll be logical breaks. It's 32 slides, so at certain points I'll pause and give Council an opportunity to ask questions and have a conversation.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder to Council that if you wish to ask a question or make a comment, just press your to speak button so that I know that you want to ask a question. Go ahead, Manager Dickey.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I'm Jarrett Dickey, Manager of Corporate Planning and Performance. Tonight, supporting me and key contributors to the budget presentation are Aaron Hoymer, Trevor Regier from the Budget Office, as well as Kristen Young from Financial Control and Reporting. Tonight, we're talking about the 2026 budget. The city's 2025-2026 budget reflects administration's commitment to sustain prosperity and the well-being of our community. This includes competitive tax and utility charges while ensuring fiscal capacity and flexibility to address the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The budget theme is focused on balancing the needs of today with the requirements of tomorrow. The goal by the end of tonight's presentation is we're hoping for two things. First, the Council will have a better understanding of how the city's budget process works and how that framework shaped the 2026 budget. Secondly, the Council will know what's coming next, the rate-based and energy budgets, bylaw approvals, and key capital updates on the horizon. The goal of this presentation is to build confidence in the 2026 budget, as well as provide some background on the municipal budget process. Part 1 will focus on the context, and it's the story behind the 2026 budget. We'll cover some key dates and decisions, how municipal budgeting works, what we mean by the Medicine Hat Advantage, and the financial pressures that shape the 2026 plan. We'll also look ahead to what comes after 2026. The presentation is broken into sections, as I mentioned earlier, and we will have an opportunity to pause and have questions and dialogue with council. Also, there'll be an opportunity at the end of the presentation for any additional questions. Part 2 of the presentation will shift gears, and Travis Tuchscher, with Director of Energy Marketing and Business Analysis, will walk through our energy and utility business units, which includes gas and electric distribution, as well as energy production, leading to council's first budget decision on November 17th. This first section of the presentation will discuss key dates as well as decisions along the timelines. The City of Medicine Hat follows a 2-year budget cycle that overlaps with the election year. The 2026 budget was approved by the previous council, giving this council time to get orientated before the next full budget cycle begins early next year. Section 283.1 of the Municipal Government Act requires municipalities in Alberta to plan ahead financially. This section requires municipalities to create long-term plans for both their day-to-day operations, also known as your operating budget, as well as infrastructure projects, commonly referred to as capital budgets. The operating plan must be for a minimum of 3 years. This is like a forecast to see how the municipality will spend money on services, as well as where the money will come from. It must show total revenue and expenses by category, whether there's a surplus or any extra money, or if there's a deficit or a shortfall, as well as any accumulated surplus and deficit over time. The second component, the capital plan, must be for a minimum of 5 years, and this is a roadmap for construction projects like bridges, roads, buildings, and water systems. It must include what new infrastructure or assets are planned, as well as how these projects are paid for, or the funding source. The City of Medicine Hat exceeds these minimum thresholds and provides council and the community with a 10-year outlook on both operating and capital expenditures. Our department is currently working with departments within the organization to create a 25-year picture to enhance strategic planning and anticipate future financial pressures. Early in the new year, work will begin on the 2027-2028 budget. This will be the first full budget council will help shape. Later in the council term, you will also review and approve the 2029-2030 budget. This slide provides a view of the budget timelines over the next few months, and there are several key milestones. On November 17th, council will review and deliberate on the 2026 budgets for land, energy production, and gas and electric distribution, along with the first reading of the gas and electric bylaws. On December 8th, we'll be back and provide an update on the $2 million efficiency target that was part of the 2026 budget. No decision will be required. This will be a check-in on progress and highlight some of the key areas the city made budget reductions without directly impacting services to the community. Then on December 15th, council will hold the public hearing and final readings for the gas and electric rate bylaws. After that, the focus will shift to the 2027-2028 budget, starting with council's strategic planning session, which will begin early in the new year. I'll pause here, and if there's any questions or comments from council at this time.
Looks like no. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll take a step back and look at the big picture and how budgeting works here in Medicine Hat. In this section, we'll bring the pieces together that shape the framework and shows how everything fits together. We'll keep the content at a high level at this point and provide additional details in early 2026. We'll touch on how the budget is structured, how money flows through the organization, and how the city's reserves help manage and keep cash and property taxes stable. This slide shows the city's budget is structured under the Municipal Government Act. Municipal budgets are unique. Municipalities must operate indefinitely and by legislation cannot run a deficit. If a municipality has reserves, those funds can be used to cover costs. However, to survive indefinitely, we cannot rely on reserves forever. Therefore, municipalities must create budgets that ensure financial sustainability. Municipalities have a clear mandate outlined in the Municipal Government Act, which identifies the core services it must provide to the community. At minimum, the municipality must provide the services as outlined within the Act, which include things like providing safety, fostering good government, protecting the environment, providing services, facilities, roads, and utilities. These are the basic foundational services that make it possible for people to live and work in Medicine Hat. The city manages two budgets, as mentioned earlier, operating and capital, and council approves both these items as spending authorizations, setting total amounts and funding sources. It is then administration's accountability to live within those spending authorizations. The operating budgets cover day-to-day services such as staffing and programs, while capital budgets fund one-time investments that build or renew infrastructure assets such as roads, buildings, utility infrastructure, and fleet assets. The budgets are organized into three stages. The first stage being base and sustaining. This covers maintaining current service levels, where council can adjust service levels to keep taxes low or redirecting resources to higher value areas of the organization. Secondly, new initiatives and capital growth. This is where council can advance your strategic priorities through new or expanded projects. And finally, other items. This reflects accounting impacts like amortization, interest on debt, showcasing the financial results of earlier decisions, which includes the full financial picture for the organization. The previous slide showed how the budget is structured and the stages administration works through in developing the budget. This slide shows the city's main business unit, each with its own operating and capital budget, giving a comprehensive picture of how the city finances fit together. The city finances are built around four areas. Municipal. This covers the day-to-day services like roads, parks, recreation, fire, and police services, where property tax discussions typically occur. Land development and real estate involves buying and selling land, and these decisions are shaped by market conditions and community growth. Third is rate-based utilities. This includes our water, sewer, solid waste, commonly referred to as our environmental utilities, as well as gas and electric distribution. This is where rate discussions typically happen. And last, energy production. This covers power generation and natural gas operations, essentially where the cost of our electricity and natural gas and utility bills come from. Together, these four areas form the foundation of the city's financial picture. This slide is a little bit busy, but it shows how the money flows through the organization. So the city's earning areas include the rate-based utilities, land development and real estate, as well as energy production. These business units generate funds that flow into the city's reserves, which sit at the center of the city's financial model. Free cash flow is the name we use for the funds flowing into the reserve from business units, and this would be comparable to a dividend in the private sector. Reserves serve two main purposes. They generate investment income that helps lower property taxes and replenish savings, and they also fund their designated priorities. It's worth noting here that investment income is affected by the amount of money in those reserves, similar to a savings account. As those reserves are utilized to fund projects or initiatives, there's less money to invest, and therefore less investment income to support municipal operations. The investment income and funding then flow back to the community through the municipal operating and capital budgets, which support the services and infrastructure that our residents rely on daily. This chart shows the city's cash and investment balances at the end of 2024, roughly $750 million. I know this sounds like a large number, but most of these funds are already committed, tied up in reserves, restricted grants, offsite levies, or needed for day-to-day operations. Reserves are like the city's savings account. Money is set aside for specific or future needs to identify or to deal with risks rather than funds being available for general spending. In most cases, the reserves highlighted in red don't fully cover the future costs they were created to cover, and others are restricted either through policy, bylaw, or legislation. The city maintains the following financial reserves. Other cash and investments. This represents the city's cash to cover its day-to-day operations. Grants and offsite levies. This represents funds received from other levels of government to support specific capital or operating projects, while offsite levies represent funds collected from developers and are restricted to support specific capital projects. Abandonment obligations. This reserve was created to fund the city's asset retirement obligations. This fund was created in 2024 and received one-time funding of $75 million from unrestricted surplus. This reserve is currently underfunded. At the end of 2024, the asset retirement liability was approximately $138 million. The next reserve is the Energy Transition Reserve. This fund will support the shift toward lower carbon emissions as part of the federal and provincial regulations. This fund was also created in 2024 with one-time funding of $75 million from unrestricted surplus. This reserve is currently underfunded. Energy transition costs are currently uncertain, but could exceed $500 million depending on the timing and changes to federal and provincial emission regulations. The Medicine Hat Endowment Fund. This was created to provide generational benefits for the citizens of Medicine Hat, a perpetual source of funding to benefit the community. The target balance in this reserve is $200 million, and this reserve will earn interest, and a minimum balance is adjusted and protected for inflation using the Alberta Consumer Price Index. The bylaw stipulates that only interest earnings above inflation are to be withdrawn from this account. So, for example, the endowment fund looks significant, but most of it is protected through bylaw, meaning that the principal can't be spent. Only about 17 million, representing accumulated earnings, is actually available for use in 2026. The operating reserve was established to stabilize fluctuations in operating activity and to address the risk of revenue or expenditure volatility. The target balance in this reserve is 10 to 30% of annual municipal cash expenses. The balance at the end of 2024 was $35 million. And the last reserve is the capital reserve. And this was to establish and support funding for infrastructure requirements. The municipality typically spends anywhere from $25 to $50 million from this reserve each year. The city also uses debt and grant funding, to pay for capital projects. The balance at the end of 2024 in the capital reserve was $208 million. Although while the balance in the reserve accounts looks strong on paper, as I mentioned, much of this money has already been spoken for, and managing it carefully is key to our long-term financial sustainability. This slide shows how the City of Medicine Hat balances the operating budget at a very high level. In 2026, the municipal operating budget is funded primarily by property taxes. However, there are several other key funding sources, which include sales of service, municipal consent and access fee, licenses, fines and penalties, government transfers, as well as other revenue. However, the city has a reliance to balance the budget to keep property taxes low. In 2026, $28.4 million will be withdrawn from reserves to balance the operating budget. In order to balance the budget, the following funds will be used. $15.1 million in investment income from reserves, $3.2 million from dividends from our utilities, land, and energy operations, $5 million from the city's endowment fund, allowable earnings, and $5.1 million from operating reserves. Without the support from the reserves, the municipal budget would need an additional $28.4 million in property tax revenue, which is about a 28% increase to property taxes just to fund the current service levels. So reserves and business earnings don't just add to the stability of our property taxes, they're essential to keeping our taxes at an affordable level while maintaining services to the community. This slide shows how reserves are used to support the capital budget. As I mentioned earlier, there's two sides to the budget, is the operating and capital. In 2026, the municipal capital budget will include $27.9 million in projects funded directly from reserves. This is a major benefit of Medicine Hat's model. In most municipalities, capital projects rely on property taxes to fund capital investment. This is typically done through borrowing funds to complete projects that require and will require principal and interest payments over a 25 or 15 to 25 year time frame. So when we combine the operating and capital budget, the city will use approximately $56 million from reserves in 2026 to balance the budget. Financial reserves are an integral part of the city balancing affordability while maintaining our service levels our community expects to receive. Just for comparison or to paint the picture a little bit longer term, so if we withdrew this amount every year without replenishing it, the financial reserves would be depleted in about 13 years. So this is why the long-term look, as well as the 2026 budget, continues to focus on closing the budget gap and strengthening the city's long-term financial sustainability. So some key takeaways from this section of the presentation. The city manages two budgets, operating to deliver services and capital to build and renew infrastructure. Decisions are organized into three stages. First, what it takes to maintain current service levels. Second, where does the city grow and invest? And these initiatives are identified through council's strategic plan. And third, the accounting and financial impact of those decisions will highlight or close the financial picture. The city operates 4 business units, each with its own financial structure. Profits from rate-based utilities, land and real estate development, and energy production help reduce pressures on property taxes and support municipal services. We also saw that all cash on hand isn't available. Most of it is restricted or already committed to other long-term obligations. And while our model has allowed us to keep taxes low, it depends heavily on those reserves and business earnings, which is why managing the city's reliance over time is so important. That was a lot. We'll take a pause, and I'm sure there is some questions at this point.
Yes, Councillor Pfaff.
So could you go back to the slide that had the graph chart that showed each how much we have in each?
Cash and investments?
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so the part that says operating capital, 243 million, how often do we add to that? Like you talked about how much we take away from that, but how often do we add?
Great question through the chair to Councillor Pfaff. So that's coming up. I will walk through some of that in the next section, but certainly we do contribute to that. But there's ebbs and flows to that contribution based on business unit earnings.
Right. Are we pulling more than we're putting in?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Hellman.
Thank you. If we could just go back to, I think it's slide 30, reserves and budget sustainability operating. When you talked about the $28.4 million from reserves that will be used to offset property tax increases this year that would otherwise be 28%, correct? That's what you said? I think, yeah. My question is, what did that look like in previous years? Is that a normal number, 28 million?
This slide here, is
Yeah.
this the slide
Yeah.
you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you through the chair to Councillor Hellman. It varies from year to year, obviously. So the big push that we're trying to close through 2026 through 2028 is that $5.1 million is the municipal budget gap. The establishment of the reserves, the endowment reserve, et cetera, are really to ensure those investment earnings are coming in. And so the financial picture changes year over year. But this has been kind of the state we've been in, that operating reserve and budget gap. There's a slide coming up that kind of shows the history of where that gap, how big that gap has been and how we've tried to close it. So we have less reliance on utilizing the principal within the reserves to balance the budget.
Okay, thank you.
I think I just missed this. Can you go back to the chart that Councillor Pfaff referenced? So this is from 2024. Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
And then the abandonment obligations and energy transition, I'm assuming that's the amount that's in that. Abandonment obligations, is that our current is that equal to our current abandonment liabilities?
Maybe through the chair, maybe I'll ask Acting Managing Director Barta to answer that.
Thank you. To the chair. So I believe Manager Dickey had mentioned this, but we've got 76 million in the reserves. However, our liability for asset retirement obligation at the end of the year was 138 million. So we do not have enough in the reserves to cover our current liability.
And is that all abandonment obligations from
Yes.
oil and gas and energy?
Yeah, the only thing that's not included in the 138 million, and you'll see an adjustment come through in our 2025 financial statements, is the asset retirement obligation for our power plant. So that 138 million includes our oil and gas abandonments, as well as the new standards that includes our buildings and landfill. I think those are the two main ones.
So basically, the abandonment obligations and the energy transition fund together, which they are not, that would cover our current abandonment obligations minus the power plant.
Correct. But
Okay.
yeah, then you
Okay.
wouldn't have any funds for the energy
Yes.
transition. Yeah.
Thank you. Are you going to get to if we overspent in 2025?
Through the chair, not in this presentation, no.
Did we overspend in 2025?
I'll maybe direct that to Acting Director Barta.
Currently, so we'll be presenting the August triennial statements at the next council meeting on November 17th. I believe our forecast to the end of the year is to be lower by about 2 million. So we had a deficit in there of 11 million through savings and other things that have happened throughout the year. We're seeing that being reduced to about 9 million. So we are coming in better than what we had budgeted.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other speakers.
Okay, thank you. Great questions and good discussion. So, as we began preparing for the 2026 budget, first we stepped back to understand the environment we're operating in and the foundation we're building from. The key question was, does Medicine Hat still hold a competitive advantage as a place to live, work, and raise a family? So anecdotally, I asked a few people in Medicine Hat why it's such a great place to live, and here are a few responses I received. So, lower cost of living compared to other places they've lived in Canada and Alberta. So this includes property taxes, buying a home, and utilities. They felt safe here and they want to raise their family in a safe community. And exceptional level of service. From parks and recreation facilities to the conditions of the roads, the community has a small town feel with all the amenities of a city. So as we look at the Medicine Hat advantage, I'll focus on a couple of key areas. So the first one will be the quality of city services, as well as the overall cost of living. The Medicine Hat advantage starts with the strength of our services and the value residents experience from the services they receive every day. The city delivers exceptional quality of service that often exceeds other cities in Alberta. This slide provides results from an Ipsos survey conducted in 2024, and the level of service excellence extends across all areas of the municipality. The residents see it in the community survey. 90% of respondents rated their quality of life as good or very good. 89% said they're satisfied with city services. 89% would recommend Medicine Hat as a place to live. And 73% also said they receive good value for their tax dollars. The advantage is real and it matters. However, sustaining excellence requires balance, and the 2026 budget was built with that in mind, protecting the services and the quality while continuing to shift towards long-term financial sustainability. This chart shows monthly utility charges for the city's rate-based utilities, which includes water, sewer, solid waste, gas, and electric distribution. However, it does not include the energy commodity for electricity and natural gas, which falls under our energy production business unit. What stands out in this chart is Medicine Hat continues to have the lowest overall rate-based utility costs among comparable Alberta communities. Even more importantly is that this comparison uses the 2026 proposed Medicine Hat utility rates against the 2025 rates for other cities, meaning that our numbers are already a year ahead of other municipalities while still remaining the most affordable. For a typical residential customer, that works out to about $74 a month, or just under $900 a year in savings compared to other municipalities, reinforcing the significant role that our utilities play in keeping our overall cost of living low. The data on this slide comes from the City of Calgary's annual residential property tax and utility charge survey. This is one of the most credible comparisons available because it measures what an average homeowner actually pays, not just the mill rate. The chart shows municipal property taxes for a standard bungalow across major Canadian cities and is a true apples to apples comparison. In 2023, the average municipal property tax in Medicine Hat was about $2,300, almost $2,400, the lowest among Alberta cities and the fourth lowest among 14 Canadian cities surveyed. This isn't a one-year story. Across the full survey, whether you look at municipal taxes alone or taxes combined with utilities, Medicine Hat consistently ranks among the most affordable cities in the province and the country. This reinforces that affordability remains a real strength and a foundation we are mindful to maintain moving forward. We will look at property taxes increase from a couple different angles in the next few slides. So to complete the affordability picture, we looked at how property tax changes compared to other Alberta cities. This chart shows the increase in municipal property tax revenue across key comparators. It isn't about who has the lowest taxes. We covered that already in the previous slide. It's about whether the pace of change here is consistent with the rest of the province. Coming out of the pandemic, many cities froze taxes and then had to make up through larger increases just to catch up. Medicine Hat opted for a more gradual approach. In 2024, we approved a 4.3% increase. It was the lowest among the peer group. And for 2025, 5.6% sits near the provincial midpoint. And in 2026, we're slightly above that average, but still well within the range of others. So even as cities across Alberta face similar pressures, Medicine Hat's path remains reasonable and aligned with our peers, while still maintaining one of the most affordable cost of living profiles in the province. When we developed the 2025-26 budget recommendation, we began by looking at affordability across multiple measures, not just property taxes and utilities, but also housing affordability, rental markets, living wage. This research was from Alberta as well as Canada Living Wage Networks. Across every indicator, Medicine Hat continues to rank among the most affordable communities in the province. With that foundation, we then turn to the city's long-term financial outlook. Costs are increasing with inflation. Service expectations have remained high, and we continue to face a budget gap that requires a long-term, gradual plan to close. The 5.6 increase was identified as the level that would support maintaining services as well as move the city closer towards closing the budget gap by 2028. For the median home in 2026, the tax increase is approximately $10 per month. The intent is to take a measured approach that protects affordability for residents while ensuring the services people depend on remain strong and sustainable. I'll pause there if there's any questions or comments.
Councillor Varga?
Yeah, just one question on, what is it, page 35, when we go back. Grand Prairie's kind of comparable to what we are as a city, but yet they have a tax increase of 2.3%. How is that possible? What are they not giving their residents?
Through the chair to Councillor Varga, that's a tough question to answer, not knowing, like I said, every community has different service levels and expectations that they receive, and just knowing where their starting point was. The picture doesn't show what happened during the pandemic, if they increased property taxes as well. Medicine Hat held flat, no increases in 2021 and 2022. And there's a chart that kind of shows what the effect of the budget gap is when those decisions are made. But to the comment of the 2.3%, I don't have the answer for Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
I'll maybe
Councillor
ask
Varga, sorry.
Aaron to
Sorry.
answer that.
I apologize, you do have to turn your mic on so that it is recorded. So your comment was just that it seems strange that it's so low. I'm wondering if it is possible to get the actuals. So for example, if you looked at a bungalow house, like the average property that you have on slide 34, and maybe a small business and maybe industry, and multifamily, what the actual taxes that people are paying are, and have that comparison as well, because you're right, it is very possible that, you know, they were already much higher than us, and so they didn't have to have a percentage increase as much as we did, but I think that would be a helpful comparison as well.
Yeah, great questions through the chair. So that report that I referred to earlier, the one from the City of Calgary, they do all those comparisons, not just residential, they do commercial as well as other properties. Would be a great resource, and we can definitely share that with council.
Yeah, because I understand the complexity because they have different ratios and stuff, but it's probably good to have a sense. Mr. Hoymer, did you have a comment?
Hi there, and through the chair. Actually, to your point, I'll bring this slide back up here on the screen. If you look at Grand Prairie compared to Medicine Hat, you will see that they are about $1,000 more on an average for, this is a representative bungalow house within the two jurisdictions. So it is difficult to compare purely on a growth basis. When you look at this, you can see that they maybe didn't need to increase as much because their mill is probably a little bit higher, or their market values are a little bit higher to start with in Grand Prairie. So if you look at Grand Prairie and what they've actually said on their website, they are saying that they're working with finding efficiencies and finding other ways to keep that low. But they also there is a little bit of a difference when it comes to the overall bill that they're paying in Grand Prairie compared to Medicine Hat. But to your point, it's difficult to compare property taxes, which is why we've tried to provide a couple of different angles to take a look at this as a comparison. The importance of the growth rate is really, this is what the average resident will experience. They don't experience as much the differential as they do what's going up month to month or year to year. So this gives you a bit of a picture of our other residents experiencing the same kind of growth in their taxes as what we're experiencing here.
Councillor Reinish?
Thank you, Your Honor. Through the chair, with regards to the survey that was asked, how many people are we talking about? Was that 2,000 people were asked or 1,000 people?
Through the chair to Councillor Reinish, I don't have the answer. It was a third-party survey done by Ipsos.
Managing Director Barta, perhaps the Director of Communications might have that answer?
Yeah, I'll maybe just ask Colleen to provide the information on that.
Thank you for that question. So the community survey that we do it's been done by Ipsos the last 2 times. We do that survey every 2 years. So that is what's considered a scientifically representative survey. So what we mean by that is they select a random sampling of people in order to ensure that the survey is, that the participants aren't coming to the table with some kind of bias. In a community of our size, surprisingly, in order to get a statistically relevant sample, it's about 400 people. But they're selected at random.
400 people?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Graham. Any other questions for Manager Dickey? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll examine the city's financial health and the factors shaping our long-term outlook. We'll review key financial targets, which are indicators and measures of sustainability over time. These show that while Medicine Hat is financially sound today, the gap between service costs and supporting revenues is widening. Most of this reflects the high level of services residents value, but these come with real cost pressures. External forces add to the challenge. Inflation, energy profits returning to historic levels, reduced provincial funding, and major investments needed, including asset retirement obligations, as well as future energy transition costs. The 2025-2026 budget identified those challenges and took early action to address the imbalance and protect the city's financial position to sustain services and reinvest in the community for the long term. Financial sustainability means being able to operate indefinitely, not just having a strong cash balance today. That means maintaining it over a long period of time. Right now, the city's cash position is strong. However, the key question is whether we are replenishing those reserves or drawing them down year over year, because that trend tells us whether the financial model is truly sustainable. The city tracks 4 core financial targets: free cash flow, debt, municipal budget gap, and cash. Together, these help us understand the long-term impact of decisions and whether we are strengthening or weakening our future position. Administration creates a 10-year financial forecast, which allows us to see the long-term impacts of decisions made today and see their implications over time. Free cash flow reflects whether earnings from our business units are sufficient to replenish reserves. In the 2026 budget, the target is $30.8 million per year. And this target represents the amount of funding to balance the operating budget as well as fund capital investments. To remain cash neutral over time, this amount of free cash would be the amount of free cash flow required to sustain or required from the city's business units. The second lever is debt. So debt helps fund large capital projects, but it also commits future cash to repay principal and interest. The city's internal debt management policy is to stay below the provincial limit. Policy 0176 states that the city shall not exceed 70% of the debt limit per the Municipal Government Act. With the current forecast of projects that we're proposing, we're approaching the 69% threshold by 2032, meaning that our capacity is tightening. This indicates that borrowing is likely not an option to support sustained future capital projects. The next item is municipal budget gap, and this indicates whether the municipality is spending more than revenues. We have a path to close that budget gap by 2028, supported through disciplined spending as well as planned annual tax increases. Closing this budget gap resolves a long-standing pressure on reserves. And the last measure is cash. Cash is the anchor. The city must operate indefinitely, so maintaining sufficient cash is foundation. To monitor the cash balance, there are key signals that tell us whether cash is trending in the right direction. Using the established financial targets ensures council's decisions support long-term financial sustainability and protects the city's ability to operate and provide steady and predictable tax adjustments for future generations. This chart shows what Councillor Pfaff was asking about as far as our free cash flows. So free cash flow, also known as business unit dividends, this chart shows actuals from 2020 to 2024 and forecasts to 2034. The spike between 2021 and 2023 is the result of increased profits from the energy market. This reflected exceptional short-term market conditions, which helped the reserves grow to about $750 million. However, those results are not expected to continue. As we look to the future, projections indicate a more modest and stable level of earnings, consistent with historical performance. This reflects a deliberate and strategic shift in our budget philosophy. Rather than relying heavily on energy production profits, which can be volatile and unpredictable, the city is transitioning toward a more stable, dependable revenue stream. This approach ensures greater financial resilience and less reliance on energy profits. By focusing on predictable sources of funding, we can better plan, invest, and deliver services without being subject to the fluctuations of commodity markets. This shift is a key pillar of our financial strategy moving forward. This chart shows the city's debt limit. As I mentioned earlier, debt is another lever that we can use to manage cash. The debt limit measures how much debt the city can carry relative to total revenues, and this ratio changes over time, with revenue swings in revenue sources such as the energy market directly affecting how much debt the city can carry. Today, the city sits below the provincial cap. However, we're approaching our internal policy limit of 70%. Based on our current forecast, we could reach 69% by 2032 before factoring major projects such as the South Side Rec Center or future energy transition work. That means our borrowing room is shrinking, and relying too heavily on debt will increase pressures on reserves, since debt obligations will impact the city's annual cash payments. To give an example of the sensitivity, a 1 percentage point change in the debt limit is equal to about $7.4 million in revenue, or roughly $8.8 million in additional debt. So a relatively small change in revenue or borrowing amount can quickly move this ratio. That's why a disciplined debt management and spending decisions are critical to maintaining flexibility for future investments. This chart shows the municipal budget gap. I think Councillor Hellman, you asked this question earlier about the budget gap. So from 2010 through the forecast of 2034, the gap represents the portion of municipal operations that were not funded through ongoing revenues such as property taxes or other sources of revenue that we discussed earlier. The municipal budget gap will be covered by operating reserves in 2026, and that's about $5.1 million. The decline you see in 2022 reflects tax freezes that occurred in 2020 as well as 2021, and reduced property tax increases in 2022. The combination of these decisions reduced revenue by about $7.5 million per year and pushed the budget gap to roughly $18 million. Fortunately, interest earned from our energy profits have since helped narrow that gap to about $9 million in 2025. However, closing the gap is our first step towards stabilizing the city's finances and protecting the financial reserves. The fourth financial target is cash. For a municipality, the key question isn't just about how much money we have, but whether we're spending more than we're bringing in. And right now, that trend is moving in the wrong direction. This chart shows the forecasted budget in our operating and capital reserves from 2024 through 2034. These are the most flexible funds that the city has for providing services and building infrastructure, and they're projected to decline by about $180 million by 2035. This is even before factoring in large projects like the Southside Recreation Center or energy transition. This forecast assumes annual 5.6 tax increases from 2025 to 2028, and the municipal budget gap is closed by 2028. Without those measures, the decline in the reserve balances would be even more steep. Again, this is why closing the budget gap and stabilizing the reserves is central to maintaining the long-term financial sustainability of the city. I'll pause again.
Counselor Pfaff.
Okay, so if we go back to the one with the municipal budget gap graph, yeah, that one. Sort of two questions. One is, obviously, we were around 25-ish million for 5 years, and then all of a sudden we jumped up in 2020. What was the cause of that jump?
Through the chair to Councillor Pfaff, so the city changed our dividend or our free cash flow policy. Has changed a few times over the years, but that was a change in how we balance or close that budget gap.
Okay, and then, just so I'm fully understanding, when we want to get to zero with the municipal budget gap, and then that would mean that our taxes are funding all of our services, is that correct, or am I totally wrong?
No.
Okay.
So back to one of the earlier slides, so through the chair to Councillor Pfaff, sorry. The gap is 5.1 million right now. However, there's still funding from the endowment fund, free cash flow from municipal business units. So there's, I can't remember the number, I think it was 28.4 million. 5.1 million is the budget gap, so whatever that difference is, 23-ish million, is still, I wouldn't say we're underfunded. We're using our investments to balance the budget.
Right, we're not using taxes to pay for services fully. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
That's an important note, just for clarity, that we do make money off of our reserve funds, so that is another source of income. In slide 39, what happens in 2028? I know they're projections, but
Which slide?
it is the free cash flow financial target one. I'm just curious, because it seems like a blip.
Good question. Thank you through the chair. So, and Travis Tucher is going to walk through the energy business unit, but difficult to say. But obviously, we use a forecast, a price forecast, which it changes. It's as soon as you do the forecast, it's outdated, essentially. So this is, like I said, this is a forecast, a snapshot in time. Those numbers will likely change, or they will change for sure. But we go with the best information we have at the time using the current price curves. So this would be one of those blips.
Okay. Just a couple more. When you were talking about slide 42, you mentioned, which is the financial target for cash reserves, you mentioned that we're not calculating in certain things that we know we're gonna have to pay for, like the energy transition and the Southside Recreation. There might be others. Why aren't we calculating that in?
Good question, and through the chair. So we haven't included that as they're not approved. We're currently scoping that work. I believe the energy group is working on Sama Solar, the economics behind that. So until those items are more refined, once those items are more refined, we'll start building. Like I mentioned, we're doing the 25-year forecast. We will also be doing scenarios around that. So Southside Recreation Center, for example, there could be an opportunity to reduce services in another area. So are we amalgamating facilities? And so that's why we haven't included them right now in our assumptions. As they get closer to completion or realization, then our group would be working with the various public services likely and looking at what, or even other third-party operators within the community, what that operating model looks like.
Thank you. And then the projected municipal budget gap going to zero. On what basis do you expect, like, when you're saying we're gonna close it in 1 year, so we have to, or a couple years, we have to find 5.1 million in today's dollars on an ongoing basis. What's the plan?
Yeah, great question through the chair. So the plan is, as I mentioned earlier, is the 5.6% tax increases for 26, 27, 28 annually. We've made modest assumptions as far as growth and inflationary pressures, and that would get us to the path of closing that budget gap.
But that's still without energy transition and Southside included.
Correct.
Okay, Councillor Varga?
Just a question on that same free cash flow graph. Where does our land development and real estate go after 29? Because they're not showing anything in that after that. Unless it's very small. There's nothing on that graph at the very bottom for land development and real estate. Are we out of the land business then at that time?
Through the chair to Councillor Varga, within the projection that we're showing here, this was a projection that we had put together during the prior budget cycle. And at that time, land development and real estate was currently working on their land strategy. So what's forecasted here is actually the sale of current inventories without the anticipation of future acquisitions or land development. So they are showing relatively modest free cash flow because of that.
Any other questions? Nope. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, good discussion. The 2026 budget is about finding balance, maintaining affordability while investing in infrastructure, preserving service levels, maintaining a healthy reserve balance, and protecting the city's long-term financial health. It's about continuing to deliver excellent services today while building a sustainable future that aligns with Council's strategic priorities. In the next section, we'll walk through some of the key budget assumptions, as well as provide an overview of the work administration has done to reduce the 2026 operating budget by $2 million and ensure that efficiency measures are not only identified, but also implemented in a way that supports service delivery and long-term financial sustainability. The 2026 budget was built with a clear principle. Before asking residents for more, we needed to do everything possible inside the organization to control costs and protect affordability. We started with disciplined assumptions. Property tax increases were 5.6% for 2025, followed by 5.1% in 2026, with an assumed growth rate of 0.5%. In addition, fees and charges were limited to a 3% increase. On the expense side, inflation assumptions were froze at 2024 budget amounts. Therefore, inflation was absorbed internally, meaning that departments had to find efficiencies rather than passing those costs onto the residents. Salary, wages, and benefits and vacancy assumptions followed collective agreements. Capital requests were reduced by $4.1 million, and administration introduced a $2 million efficiency target. Existing staff positions were reallocated to priority areas rather than adding new positions, and a contribution from the endowment fund was incorporated to help balance the budget. Alongside the budget process, we also reduced the number of budget amendments coming to council. In 2023, there were 27 budget amendments approved by council, down to only 10 in 2024 and 2025. Together, these decisions reflect a balanced approach, managing pressures responsibly, protecting services, and keeping taxes as low as possible while maintaining long-term financial sustainability. As part of the 25-26 budget, we introduced a $2 million municipal efficiency target for 2026. At that time, it wasn't a fully defined plan. Rather, it was a directive for administration to identify $2 million in ongoing operational savings within municipal services. The goal was clear: reduce the burden on taxpayers by lowering the tax rate without compromising core municipal services. This initiative reflects administration's ongoing focus on transparency, accountability, and financial discipline, ensuring that efficiency measures are not only identified, but also implemented in a way that supports service delivery and supports long-term financial sustainability. The finance team, along with corporate planning and performance, has worked across departments to find efficiencies through collaboration. Several budget reduction and opportunities were identified. We will be returning to council on December 8th to share the details on meeting this target. I can pause if there's questions. If there's none, I will continue.
Go ahead.
In the previous section, we explored the strength of Medicine Hat's value position, the unique combination of services, affordability, and quality of life that sets our community apart. The 2026 budget reflects a disciplined and strategic approach, keeping taxes as low as possible while safeguarding the delivery of core municipal services. It's a careful balance between fiscal responsibility and maintaining the high standards our residents expect. The actions taken in this budget have made a meaningful impact by absorbing inflation, limiting capital growth, introducing an efficiency target, and implementing new revenue tools such as the endowment dividend. We've slowed the rate of reserve decline and positioned the city to manage the financial transition responsibly. That being said, the long-range financial remains clear. Even with these measures, reserves are projected to decline by approximately $180 million over the next decade, or about $18 million annually. This reflects several structural challenges: a return to historical energy earnings, reduced provincial funding, significant capital investment requirements, as well as ongoing cost of maintaining current service levels. While we've taken important steps towards sustainability, we're not there yet. Administration will continue to balance affordability with the realities of our cost structure and future investment needs, ensuring that we protect both the services our community relies on as well as the financial health of the city. As we look ahead, our focus shifts to sustaining the progress made in the 2026 budget and continuing to build a stronger long-term financial position for Medicine Hat. This includes strategic financial planning. We will deepen our long-range financial forecasting and strategic planning to ensure our financial outlook is fully aligned with Council's priorities and the evolving needs of our community. The 2027-2028 budget cycle, entering the next budget cycle, will continue to balance service levels, new initiatives, predictable tax pathways, as well as affordability. This includes presenting clear options and trade-offs to support informed decision-making. We will maintain budget discipline, and that remains essential. We maintain a strong focus on in-year financial reporting and financial management, thoughtful budget amendments, and identifying internal efficiencies to manage emerging cost pressures. Major capital decisions are on the horizon. Those include Sama Solar, facilities for the future, electric system renewals, airport runway upgrades, and other long-term infrastructure needs. Each will need to be evaluated through a clear lens of a funding strategy as well as affordability. And last but not least, our debt policy. We will review our debt policy to ensure borrowing decisions support the long-term financial sustainability and stability, as well as preserve flexibility as we invest in infrastructure and transition the city's energy system. Thank you for your time. I know there'll be more questions, but I do want to point council to the city's budget page, medicinhat.ca/budget. This is where you'll find all the documents for the 2025-2026 budget, and you can expect to see similar information on the 27-28 budget. It's a pretty big document. If you do nothing else, read the executive summary. I think it provides a pretty good synopsis of tonight's presentation, as well as where we're headed. As we begin preparing for the 2027-2028 budget, it remains important to stay the course. The budget theme, as I mentioned earlier, was we want to balance the needs of today with the requirements of tomorrow. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any further questions.
Counselor Pfaff.
So, talking about the 180 million draw on the operating capital reserve balance over 10 years, you mentioned that, you know, there's a bunch of different factors in that that go into it. One of them that you mentioned was service levels, maintaining our current service levels. Can you estimate what percentage of that draw is maintaining our service levels at the rate they're at?
Good question. Through the chair to Councillor Pfaff. So on October 6th, we presented the service levels, the external facing service levels. It's a document that you can actually find in that same budget space. That it will show a representation of the 2025 budget as a percentage of what it costs to provide those services. I don't have a specific number of what our current service level. So that draw of 18 million also includes our capital requirements. So that
And the capital is much larger than the operating? or-
capital would be, like, as I mentioned earlier, we draw up typically 25
Yeah, okay.
to 50 million from our reserves annually to fund capital projects.
Counselor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are a number of issues here, obviously, and you've clearly presented them. I just want to make sure I'm sort of understanding the options that are open for us. We're at our own policy level, debt level of 70%. We're virtually there, 69%. Now, the province says we can borrow 100%. I'm sorry, it's 100% of what figure? That's of our annual revenue?
It's,
Through the-
I apologize.
I'm-
It's 70% of the municipal debt level. I don't know if you want to,
Through the chair to Councillor Cox, so the Municipal Government Act is 2 times revenue is the amount of debt you're able to hold. So like I mentioned earlier, our municipal, or our revenue changes as our energy revenue fluctuates. So that's why we've chosen to be conservative and set the limit lower than the provincial limit. But that's, the target is, how it's calculated is basically 2 times annual revenue.
All right, so you're proposing that we may want to review that?
Through the
That's part
chair
of the
to Councillor
the
Cox.
upcoming
That-
plan?
That is a discussion that we could potentially have, correct?
Okay. We're trying to reduce, and we forecast that the municipal budget gap will be eliminated by 2028. The municipal budget gap being, and please correct me if my understanding is wrong, the difference between tax revenue and business and fees revenue, and eliminating the deficit by borrowing from our savings account. That's forecast to be eliminated by 2028?
Through the chair to Councillor Cox, that's correct. So the budget gap for 2026 is 5.1 million. And through the measures that we've laid out, the 5.6% tax increase annually from 26 to 28, as well as our cost pressures and conservative inflation assumptions would close that gap by 2028.
Okay.
The question around debt, so the debt would be used to finance capital projects. However, the debt repayments, the principal and interest, would have to be repaid through our operating
Right,
statements.
right. Okay, so that leaves us with the other lever to pull, and that is increasing taxes. Is that about the only other lever that we have here?
Through the chair to Councillor Cox, like I said, or there was one slide that showed the percentage of, or the revenue sources, so fees and charges, licenses, et cetera, are other levers as well. Lobbying provincial government or other levels of government for additional funding is our other option as well. Pursuing grant opportunities on the capital side, partnerships, et cetera, would be other levers that we would pursue in addition to that.
We always look at those opportunities and try to maximize them. They're somewhat less than guaranteed. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clugston.
Through the chair to Mr. Dickey, I would suggest that reducing spending is another lever that can be pulled as well. Nowhere do you mention, or I didn't see in the presentation, is the rate of return on the endowment and restricted funds over the this year, last year, previous years. What's been our rate of return?
Through the chair to Councillor Cox, so, Councillor Clugston. The assumption we've made, our target is 5.5% return, less our investment management fees.
Right. So quick math, 750 million, 5%, that's $37.5 million of revenue a year. Are you showing that anywhere in the budget as it's going back into reserves or into operating? Because let's just round it up to 40 million. That's 40% of the tax supported budget. That's a huge amount of money. And I just, where is it all going?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Clugston, yes, those assumptions are built into the budget.
Yeah. Acting Managing Director Barta.
Thanks. If I could just add to Manager Dickey's response. So that is anticipated over the long term. Of course, we don't always get the 5.5% every year. Some of the investment income will go to those reserves. So there's 2 reserves that are interest-bearing, as well as the endowment fund. So that doesn't all come into the municipal to offset our costs. It'll go to replenish and build those reserves. So it's the abandonment obligation reserve, the energy transition reserve, and the endowment fund where they will get some of that investment earnings. So net, and then we offset that with our management fees. So about net that we're getting for 2025, I believe, is about 30 million that will help with offsetting that deficit.
I'll have to take that offline. You have to show me that.
I'm just going to wedge in quickly. So the Heritage Reserve Fund, which is now the endowment fund, that money, we haven't spent that money yet. We have just been putting it back into the endowment fund, have we not? The interest, yes.
Yes, the interest has been going into that endowment fund. However, in 2025, we are withdrawing 5 million out of that fund to help support municipal operating expenses.
Okay. I did not know that was the purpose of it. Go ahead. Councillor Mohammed.
Thank you for your presentation. Through the chair, I'm just wondering, in page 39, to that forecast for free cash flow, what assumptions underlie the energy revenues for 2026? But also, we talked about the spike in 2029. I'm just curious what the assumptions are.
Sorry, just trying to find that in my notes here. So slide 23, is that that's the free cash flow?
39, so I guess that's on my document. I'm looking at my document, so sorry.
Do you know which slide it is in the presentation?
It says 23, yes, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Mohammed. So again, like I mentioned earlier, is those free cash flow are based on forecast numbers from our energy production business unit. They're less stable, I would say. And again, as I mentioned earlier, they fluctuate as a forecast is produced. It's wrong the next day. So these numbers will change. And so at time of budget preparation, those were the numbers that we used as part of the assumption. So they'll likely be different tomorrow if we were to rerun those figures. So, yeah, like I said, it's a forecast based on energy market.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one more question? Okay. Then, back to capital spending, how much is that into maintaining old assets and also new growth?
Great question, through the chair to Councillor Mohammed. So our sustaining capital budget, we've typically looked at what the group, each department gets allotted a bucket of money based on historic spend. And so that is basically to maintain the assets at the level of service that the community expects. So we take into account risk, the frequency of breaks, et cetera, our road condition, they do pavement quality index, et cetera. So that's how we manage our sustaining capital. So that would be reinvestment in our current infrastructure. Growth capital is really driven by council's strategic plan. And so if council, for example, previous council wanted us to pursue Southside Recreation Facility as an example, that would be a growth opportunity that would be based on an alignment with council's strategic plan.
Is there a assigned budget for 2026 for that?
We do have that. Maybe I'll let Aaron, or I can speak to it. That's getting into the details a little bit. So, and this is, again, on that budget website that I referred to earlier, all the information on sustaining capital. So let's see if I can find a total, because this is pretty granular, but.
That's okay.
Happy to take it offline if you'd like, but.
We can take it offline.
Just as an example, energy production for sustaining capital has a budget of $36 million for 25 and 2026. Corporate services has a budget of $32.9 million. The total municipal, oh, there it is. The total municipal sustaining capital budget for 2025 and 2026 is $83 million. And again, all of the items are detailed in that budget website, so you can see project-specific, what projects it's related to. On the growth capital side is much lower. So the growth capital for 2025, 2026 is approximately $6.5 million.
No, sounds good. That answer actually answers my question. I just wanted to see how much is dedicated to growth versus maintaining assets. But thank you. Yeah.
It's in section 3 of the capital budget.
Do you have a follow-up? Okay, Councillor Young.
Thank you, and thank you, Manager Dickey. Appreciate all this information. It's a lot to take in. I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear, just on like the overall snapshot of where we're at and where we're going to be in 5 years. So I heard you say this. The two most important things are closing the budget gap and then maintaining the reserves, right? So we're saying that by 2028, we are going to close that budget gap, but we're also, if I look at one of the slides, but we're also going to see a reduction in reserves, right? So we're saying even with a 5.6% increase every year, did I catch this right? We are still going to see, are we going to see our reserves deplete to a specific level? Is it, or are we going to see our reserves gone?
Great question through the chair to Councillor Young. So the budget gap, yes, we have a plan to close that. The reserve balance, even with our plan, we will see a decline over the next 10 years of approximately $180 million. Is it a burning platform or something? We're raising awareness so that council goes into this term eyes wide open as far as what are some spending limitations and what is the big long-term financial picture. Like I said, the municipality has to operate indefinitely. So it's not like we can operate for 5 years and then, okay, we don't have any money left and walk away. This is something that we need to ensure the sustainability so that in 4 years or 5 years, we don't have to increase property taxes by 15, 20% to maintain our current service levels. And that's where we're really trying to make sure that this council is going into this term eyes wide open as far as what are our limitations and what are we trying to measure? What are we monitoring to make sure that we're set up for success for this community?
Okay, perfect, thank you. Yeah, and so, and I recognize we're not here to make a decision today, we're just here to learn and make sure we understand the lay of the land. So generally, we're in a decent spot, but we have some big challenges coming forward, right? So then really our two options are we increase revenue or we decrease expenses, right? Those are ultimately the two options we have in front of us, so. And that's with already an increase of 5.6% every year. So yeah, so I'm sure we're gonna have some people who have lots to say about that, and so it'll be good to have that discussion on how we're gonna manage that, so thank you.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make sure, this has been very helpful, and I appreciate it, and the questions have been helpful. If we're eliminating the municipal budget gap by 2028, but reserves are continuing to decline, where's the pressure on the reserves coming from?
Great question through the chair to Councillor Cox. As I mentioned, the reserves are used to fund both operating and capital. So the biggest draw would likely be on the capital side, where those, to sustain our assets, our aging infrastructure is requiring, like I mentioned, $25 to $50 million per year to sustain. And that's organizationally, that's not just municipal, but as when we look at our entire organization, we have utilities, we have an energy division, we have, so those are the financial headwinds that we're facing. And to kind of add on to Councillor Young's question is, those are the financial headwinds that we're looking into. And so just making council aware that these are some of the challenges. And so, like I said, the biggest draw on those reserves would be from our capital requirements.
I would like to have maybe a more, I'm going to use the word reasonable, but I'm not saying anyone's being unreasonable, but for our municipal budget gap to close by the target, I feel perhaps that's an unreasonable expectation, given that the major capital and strategic projects that we anticipate, and in terms of like we're forecasting, we're gonna have to do some energy transition stuff. We got Southside, there's an airport runway replacement mentioned here. Electric renewal is also mentioned. So given that we understand that some of those projects have to happen, some of them don't have to happen, but they are anticipated, is that 2028 zero budget gap in fact reasonable? And if you calculated all of those other, like the capital and strategic projects in, what does that then look like?
Great question through the chair. So the budget gap, when we started this process, the review of reserves and the long-range financial picture, we had intended to close that budget gap, I believe, in 2026, and we deferred it. And so it would defer closing that gap. It's difficult to answer your question with regards to making those strategic decisions and how that would impact tax increases, as well as the desired target of closing the gap by 2028 without layering those in. Like, we don't have all the details on what the Southside Recreation Center looks like. We don't have a budget. We don't have what the operating cost is. We don't have what trickle-down effect those decisions would have on potential other facilities, whether it be city-owned or other, that type of thing. So it would, like I said, that's part of the work that our team will be working on over the next year, is fine-tuning that long-range picture.
Okay. So I believe, and Managing Director Pankos, please correct me if I'm wrong, during the MCC discussions, it was about 50 million per year over the next 10 years for energy transition that would need to happen?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Clark. I think people have been getting a bit confused on where some of those numbers came from. We had forecast as part of our sustaining capital plan, $500 million for the energy business across the next 10 years. That's probably where you're thinking of the 50 million. That does not include anything for energy transition because that still remains uncertain and subject to federal and provincial carbon requirements and future council decisions, as opposed to the sustaining capital of replacing aging substations through time, of making sure that we maintain our existing asset base.
So the 500 million over 10 years is included in the assumptions in this budget, but no energy transition is?
That is correct.
Okay, so we have like 7.6 million allotted to that in our reserves? Is that right?
76.
76,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
And as we draw on that, we also lose revenue, interest revenue from it. Yeah, I am just feeling maybe like the budget gap closing is a little further out than anticipated in the presentation, but I'm sure as time goes on, we'll get clarity. Councillor Varga.
So in your, sorry, through the chair, included in your assumptions are probably the fact that the feds and the province aren't going to give us as much funding either down the road. Is that an assumption that's true too? That we might not get that much from them anymore also?
Through the chair to Councilor Varga, we're using what the current level of funding that we're receiving from those levels of government as the base. That being said, that can change at any point in time. So like I said, it's kind of like the energy forecast. As information gets provided, those assumptions get updated.
So hopefully we can advocate and keep advocating for more money all the time, right, from them, I hope, so that we can do some of these projects and not have to raise the taxes and look for more capital money. Hopefully,
yeah,
we can do that.
certainly that's a lever on the capital side. If we're pursuing a project, Southside Recreation Facility could be an example where we could pursue funding from other levels of government. And so that's why it's difficult at this time to include some of those large projects as part of our forecast. As that information becomes available, those assumptions will be refined and more details will be provided at that time.
Councillor Pfaff.
Okay, so getting back to Mayor Clark's question about the municipal budget gap and in regards to new projects that we'd want to do and how maybe that doesn't add up correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the municipal budget cap have to deal with our operating budget? So those projects would be capital and not factored in. I mean, I realize it's sort of like a spreadsheet thing I'm talking about as opposed to a money problem, which we still have. But am I understanding that right, that the municipal budget gap just deals with operating costs, not with capital?
So through the chair to Councillor Pfaff, so anytime, typically when you have a capital project, there's associated operating costs. I'll use Southside Recreation Facility as another example. So sure, we could open up a new facility, but then we also have to operate it. So we may spend $50 million on the capital side or more, then there may be $500,000 in operating costs.
Gotcha.
And if there's debt associated with that, that also flows through. So there's principal and interest obligations that are associated with that project, which would then flow through on the operating side.
Perfect, makes sense.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions at this point, so we'll move on to Director Tewksher.
You can roast Travis now.
Thank you very much. The presentation was excellent. And thank you for answering all of our questions. Welcome, Director Tewksher. Managing Director Pankos, did you want to do an intro?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I believe Lola covered it. This is really recognizing that many of the budget amendment decisions coming, starting next council, relate to energy and utilities. So we thought it would be helpful to provide the prior information about the overall state of the city financials. And then we also thought it would be helpful just to highlight how the energy business and the utility business makes money. And with that background, hopefully you'll be better equipped to be comfortable making decisions with respect to our request for budget amendments and utility rate setting.
Thank you, go ahead.
Thanks. Good evening. The next portion of the presentation will focus on our energy division. My goal tonight is to give you an overview of the energy business unit and its financial impact on the municipality. I will get into some deeper detail on some slides, so please stop me if you have any questions. So I'll start by saying our energy business is a rare scope of accountability within Alberta. City of Medicine Hat has typical municipal accountabilities, plus natural gas distribution, electric distribution, natural gas production, and electric generation. This next slide provides a general overview of our vertically integrated utility. On the top in the purple boxes is our natural gas business unit. We have production that is about 10 to 15% of our city's consumption. We also have a connection to the Nova Gas transmission line, which provides additional gas into our system, which then serves our residential customers and our businesses. In the blue boxes is the electric side of the energy division. We have electric generation of about 285 megawatts. We have the electric distribution that serves our customers, and we also have a connection to the Alberta grid, which we use for imports and exports of any excess generation or any times it's economical to import power to our system. This graph just highlights the importance of the energy business and the profits we've provided. It shows from 2018 to 2023, and as you can see, in 2022 and 2023, the electric generation seen record high in prices, and that came through in earnings for that business unit. But I'd also like to highlight how cyclical commodity prices can be. In 2018, as you can see, there was a very low earnings year, and then you get to the high of about $120 million in earnings. So we've done so well so far, and to highlight a few examples, on the left-hand side is the 10-year annual dividend summary from all the electric business units, with a high being in 2023. And on the right-hand side, you can see the Medicine Hat Endowment Fund. In 2017, it started at zero, and we've been able to grow that fund to $200 million. But I want to highlight the past does not define our future. Supply and demand and the markets that drove in the past are changing. We're also going through a significant rule change in the Alberta electric market, which will have impacts on our business unit. Government policy is changing on how suppliers and consumers can participate, especially for electricity. There's also changes to carbon policy on the federal level and impacts to our provincial level as well. So next, I'll get into our distribution business units. And just to clarify, speaking tonight about rate-based utilities, I'm focusing on electric and gas distribution. So just a high-level overview, utility rates pay for building, maintaining, administering, operating, and replacing utility infrastructure and related services. Utility rates are calculated on a regulated rate design principle to achieve a revenue-to-cost ratio equal to 1. The rate design model allows for recovery of the costs along with a regulated rate of return. Utility distribution systems has a focus on cost containment to minimize cost to our customers. Rate increases are typically driven by inflation of goods and services, aging infrastructure, and unexpected reduction in consumption or demand. So why are rates regulated? The industry is a natural monopoly, and what I mean by that is capital costs are very high for the distribution assets, and it would not make economic sense to have multiple companies building and developing assets to serve the same customers. Therefore, it is to protect our customers. Alberta Utilities Commission, the AUC, regulates gas and distribution rates in Alberta. However, Medicine Hat calculates our rates based on the AUC principles, but the City Council is the regulator for us. So at a very high level, and I will get into more detail in the future, in the coming slides, but there are three main steps to determining our rate design and our rates. The first is the revenue requirement. What costs should be collected in rates? Second is cost allocation. What rate classes are the costs allocated to? And then lastly, rate design. That's how we collect these rates from our customers in those rate classes. So determining the revenue requirement. The big buckets, cash operating expenses, which include operating and maintaining the assets, depreciation, which is the capital return over the operating life of the asset, and then the regulatory return on the asset net book value. The slide might be a little tough to read. The very top blue box is the revenue requirement we just discussed. From there, we allocate costs to rate classes such as residential, farm, small commercial, medium commercial, large commercial, industrial, and then some street lighting customer classes as well. From there, then we drill down into each rate class and determine the billing mechanisms that will charge our customers to recover those rates, or to recover those costs. So a little further detail into the cost allocation, and this is a rate-making principle we feel is important to highlight. The major costs of a system are to meet the peak demand of customers on the system. These costs are referred to as demand-related costs. The graph on the right shows two separate customers. Customer B and customer A both have the same demand or the same peak demand. However, customer A uses a lot less energy than customer B, as customer B is near the peak for the majority of the period. And even though customer A consumes significantly less volume, the utilities cost to serve each of these customers is very similar due to having to build and maintain the system to meet this customer's peak. So, however, there are a few limitations to using demand in rate setting. It is costly to measure all customers' demand due to the meters required. They are upgraded meters to measure demand. It is also more challenging to explain this to customers. So for mainstream customers such as residential and small commercial, utilities typically use a proxy of consumption to deal with these challenges. I do want to highlight, however, it is where it's possible for demand-related system costs, where possible demand-related system costs are best recovered through demand rates. It is the most accurate, fair, and lowest risk for cost recovery. Hopefully this link works on the agenda package, but this provides more information on understanding your bill. I encourage you guys to check it out. There's lots of good information on this site. So this is the previously approved 2026 budget for the electric distribution unit. Don't want to highlight a whole bunch other than the fact it's a cost recovery, one-to-one cost plus that regulated return. On the gas distribution side, same thing. So like I said, we're recovering our cost plus a regulated rate of return. Lastly, you have seen a version of the slide in Jared's presentation. Like I mentioned, this slide only takes into consideration the electric and gas distribution rates. The two highlighted columns on the right are the City of Medicine Hat's approved 2025 rates. And then the far right column is what will be coming for proposed rates at the November 17th meeting. Compared to the average municipality in Alberta, citizens of Medicine Hat will receive a $70 per month, their cost will be $70 per month lower than the average municipality in Alberta. So that's the electric distribution unit. I can stop now if you have questions on this business unit.
Just the question, the presentation is slightly different than the one in the package. Will we be replacing the presentation we have with the one that you're presenting?
Yeah, my apologies.
Okay,
I was going to
thank
mention
you.
that to start. We'll get you an updated presentation. There was just some requests that we were kind of scrambling last minute to put together. So.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem. So next we'll go into the commodity business units, electric generation and gas production. So just to highlight, as I mentioned earlier, it's unique for a municipality to own energy-based commodity business units. They are a higher risk business unit. There is definitely commodity cycles, boom and bust pricing cycles. On the gas production side, our reserves naturally diminish over time, and there's also post-production costs to abandon and reclaim these wells. As mentioned in the previous discussion, there's high capital costs and variable earnings through the volatile swings in the market. So any given year is not accurate indicator of business long-term viability. We look to capture pricing highs and withstand the pricing lows. So another graph just to highlight commodity prices over time. On the left-hand side is the electric power price. The right axis is the natural gas. The blue line is the pool price through time. As I mentioned, in 2016, on the electric side, we've seen a pool price of $18. And then in 2022, we've seen a pool price of $162. So shows you very clearly the volatility in the market and how supply demand can really swing the market. On the gas side, although it doesn't show as much over this term, we did see a high of approximately $5 in 2022, and we've had many years around the $2 mark for natural gas prices. So our philosophy, we've typically behaved as a business, and with this we align with market prices. We participate in the market, in the export market on the electric side. We set local prices in line with other provincial retailers. We've provided an energy division to the city for uses as needed. But this had led to some questions from the community, and that led to the independent business review by KPMG. Next, just to highlight, we do have an electric exemption under the Electric Utilities Act. A few things to highlight. Our local customers don't pay transmission tariffs when supplied locally. Municipalities aren't allowed to own generating assets, but City Medicine Hat can, within limits. This limit is what we call an N-1. We're allowed to build generation, and to the level that if we lose our largest generator, we can still meet our peak city load, and you'll see that in some other slides. As I also mentioned, distribution rates are not regulated by the AUC. Our council is the regulator. And City Medicine Hat is the only retailer in our franchise area for electric, natural gas. Their other retailers are allowed into our territory. And then any interface through the provincial government must follow provincial rules. So this slide is pretty busy, but it's a general overview of how we make power. So at a high level, we have what's called, sorry, do you have a question? Oh, sorry. At a high level, we have what's called a 4-on-2, which is 4 natural gas combustion turbines and 2 steam turbines at the main site. And we also have a newer remote site, which includes 2 simple cycle gas turbines. So all told, we have approximately, in the summer, about 270 megawatts. There's some derates once the temperature heats up. In the wintertime, we can get that up to about 285, 290 megawatts. Our average electrical load is between 120 and 215 megawatts. I don't know if you want me to go into how combined cycle works, or if you have any questions on what combined cycle means, or we good to keep going on?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm not expecting you to be able to see all those points. What that is 8,760 hours on the horizontal axis. It shows our city load in megawatts on the left-hand side. As you can see, we are summer peaking for our electric load. It can get up to that 220, 225 megawatts. Very variable based on that seasonality. As I mentioned, our assets are built to N-1, so I mentioned in the summer we're at about 270 megawatts. But if we lost our largest generator of 55 megawatts, that would take us down to about 215 megawatts. So we try to find that balance, or if we lose that generator, we can still serve our city load. And then at times when the load in the city is low, we will look to take our additional generation and sell it to the province if the pricing in the province is economical. There's a lot on this slide, but what I've attempted to do is show the gross margin lines from our income statement and provide a brief description on each of those lines. So the very first line is our gain loss on risk management instruments. This is our hedging activity that we do, and I'll have another slide on that. Second line, as I mentioned, is sales to the pool, which is very dependent on volatility and market pricing. Third line is sales to retail. This is our sales of electric energy to our customer base. The general sales line includes large contracted customers and ancillary service revenue. Get into some cost of sales. Payment in lieu of taxes, or pilot, is a tax on any transactions with the grid. Transmission charges, the city pays a loss factor on all exports to the grid, so that's a charge when we do export. Carbon charge, as mentioned, we do have obligations under the provincial carbon pricing mechanism that if we exceed a certain threshold, we do have to meet a carbon or make a carbon payment to meet that threshold. The fuel line, this is the natural gas that's input into our electric generation units to generate the power. And lastly, electric energy purchases consists of power purchase agreement with other producers on our system. So just overview of our hedge policy. Our hedging policy 0159 is the hedging policy for the city. Risk management hedging is the process of identifying, controlling, and minimizing exposure to adverse commodity price movements. Two of our program objectives is to help mitigate the business unit's exposure to commodity price volatility and diversify energy marketing efforts. And secondly, enhance stability and cash flows by hedging the commodity price on a portion of our production, meeting specific cost and return objectives. Now I might lose you, but please stop me if you have any questions. So the Alberta wholesale power market and how the market price is set. It is very similar to a stock exchange. Every day, actually the day before, all generators must put into offers to the Alberta Electric System Operator of what price they're willing to sell their power at. These offers to sell can be at prices from $0 to $999 per megawatt hour. And I will highlight this is changing and changing significantly with the new restructured energy market that's expected to come in around 2027. However, then the ISO organizes the offers from the lowest price to the highest price and dispatches the generation to meet the demand. Demand in Alberta does not have to bid into the market. The ISO forecasts the demand and dispatches the generation based on their forecast. I do want to highlight the marginal price is paid to all dispatched generators. So for example, if a wind generator bid in $0, but they went up the curve and it took the $50 offer to serve all the demand, every generator gets the $50. I'm going to flip to a slide way in the back. Oops. Oh, shoot. What did I do? Can you get me back? So I'll go. This is a sample of how these offers stack up in the market. Of course, it's my very last slide. So I'll flip to it myself. So on the bottom is supply, and on the left-hand side is the offers. So typically you'll see a group of offers in the $0 range, which typically is renewable energy or non-dispatchable generation sources. And then you'll start inching up as we get further to the right. These are marginal cost offers, mostly for gas generation. Maybe that's online at partial load. Then they'll bid in their variable costs to get dispatched for their full generation capacity. And then as you move up, you'll have higher priced offers some hydro that have, that don't have always the ability to restore their power. They have only, the water that's built up is a scarce resource, so they'll require a higher price to dispatch that resource. And then you'll have strategic offers at the very high end that can reach up to that $999 I mentioned earlier. So if I get
Can you,
Oh,
sorry, can
okay.
you explain the strategic offers and the non-dispatchable? Like why, is it like bidding $1 on the Price is Right kind of thing? Like they'll just bid in at that real high price in a similar kind of, well, we might as well?
Yeah, I'll start with the undispatchable question. So some assets, it's long lead times to start or stop, or it's very costly to start and stop them, so they'll just want to stay online, and therefore they'll bid lower price at $0. The strategic offers are typically the larger players in the market. They have, a lot of megawatts, and so some of the megawatts they'll have bid low, but then it's very advantageous if they can potentially get the prices bid up. Then they get, like I said, if the price does go to say $900, they get that on their whole portfolio. So they try and see if they can potentially economically withhold to push the price up, and then that is better off for their whole portfolio.
And then if you do bid in, say you bid in at $70 and the price for everyone was 50, you still have to sell your power at, no, you don't, okay.
So if you're bid at 70, but only the $50 offer is needed to meet demand, your energy, you don't produce your energy. You're left offline. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Counselor Pfaff?
Sorry, I'm too close, I always do that. So can you change your bid? Like if you bid 70 and then it's at 50, can you, how quickly can you change your bid?
Yeah, good question. So like I said, you bid the prior day, so today we would have bid for a price tomorrow. However, you can adjust your pairs, your price pairs. That's what they call your bids. You have 7 blocks of price pairs. So I can bid, and I'll get to that on another slide, but within 2 hours, you can't change your price pairs. So if you're 3 hours out, you can go ahead and adjust your price pairs.
While we're asking questions, you talked about our hedging policy. Excellent explanation. I noted in your line 1 explanation, we're down about $1 million. What's like the average over, or is that a possible? So actual to date is minus 976. What's like the average per year? Like generally, we would not be out. What kind of happened this year that was a little bit different?
I wouldn't say this is abnormal. One thing, it's kind of counterintuitive. If you think that if you've actually lost money on your hedges, we typically hedge a portion or a smaller portion of our portfolio. That means the rest of our portfolio is doing better than we expect or meeting higher returns. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I know it looks bad when you see minus 976, but it is, same as in the stock market. You set a price to sell, and after that price, you're not supposed to necessarily look at it. You've met your return objectives, and you should be comfortable with making that transaction.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I think we've covered that slide. So now I'm going to get into heat rates. There are 2 different heat rates to consider in the power market. The first heat rate I'll mention is what's called a plant heat rate. And this is an asset-specific, the amount of gas in GJs it takes to produce 1 megawatt of power. It's also it can be looked at as the efficiency or the variable cost efficiency of that plant. Market heat rate is the price divided by GJs in the market. And so that's what the market is willing to compensate you for in the market. So assets with a plant heat rate lower than the market heat rate can produce more efficiently than what they're getting compensated for, and therefore is profitable for them to be in the market on a variable cost basis. So just to provide a simple example, assume the market price is $65 and the gas cost is $2 a GJ and a plant heat rate of 10. It would cost that asset $20 per megawatt hour, the 10 heat rate times 2 GJs, a variable cost, and it could then sell this into the market at $65 per megawatt and make it a profit, on a variable cost basis, a profit of $45 per megawatt hour. I've mentioned the variable cost basis and does not include fixed O&M costs or return on and of capital. So when I get to the city's daily price volume pair bids that we were speaking about earlier, the city must generate enough to serve our city load, and therefore we bid that volume, our projected city load, in at $0 to make sure that we're dispatched. After city load is met, the remainder of the plant is bid at different energy blocks, depending on variable cost of each unit plus a return. I will differentiate between online units. If our unit is online, it's say 20 megawatts, but it has a capacity of 40 megawatts, we will look to bid that at variable cost plus a small return as it's already online. Offline units will be bid in based on our variable costs, but also a cost for starting and stopping that unit plus a return or margin on that. Lastly, I'll get into price duration curve, as it also has a significant effect on pool sales. So the graph on the right shows the highest 15% of hours from 3 sample years. And I did pick the years for a reason. So 2017, our pool sales for that year in total was $4.7 million. It is represented by the blue line in the graph. And as you can see, only 1% of the hours were over $100. If we then look at 2023, it's the red line. And you can see well over 15% of those hours were over $100. It doesn't actually even show, it goes further back to see how many hours were over. On the green line, which is 2024, 10% of the hours were over $100. And so that second bullet shows the volatility in our pool sales, a peak of $107 million in 2023. 2024 is still a very strong year, $85.4 million. But as I mentioned, in 2017, a low price, low volatility year, we made $4.7 million. Next, I'll do a retail commodity rate comparison. I just want to highlight this comparison is based on our interim commodity rate approach, which is the floor of 7 cents and the ceiling of 11 cents. So the left bar graph shows our comparison to one-year fixed rate offerings, including commodity, administration charge, transaction, and trading fee charges. It's not always easy to decipher other offerings, and it's important to look at all the charges all in. We, on a one-year contract comparison, are lower by 3.7 cents a kilowatt hour. The right-hand graph, same idea, just based on 2-year fixed rate offerings, and in that comparison, we're 3.1 cents lower. So the next line on that income statement was ancillary services. Ancillary services are operating reserves that the ISO, Alberta Electric System Operator, uses to maintain system reliability when there's unexpected imbalance between supply and demand due to various system conditions. Operating reserves can be provided from unloaded capacity on generating units or from curtailable load that can be dispatched on short notice. The City of Medicine Hat offers daily into the AS market. This accounts for $4 to $9 million per year in revenues. So on to pilot regulation. As I mentioned, pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes and is a regulation under the Electric Utilities Act. This regulation was created to even the playing field between the City of Medicine Hat, which is a non-taxable entity, and other entities that are taxable in the market. So the city has to pay pilot on all power that's imported or exported to the grid, and the amount that's paid is based on value-added transactions multiplied by the corporate tax rate in Alberta.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you. I was just commenting that I remember when they came up with this lovely term, payment in lieu of taxes, equalizing Medicine Hat to other taxable entities and insisting that we had to pay, in essence, a penalty for making money. Who gets that pilot fee? Does that go to AESO? Or where does that money go?
It goes into the Alberta Balancing Pool, and then other customers in Alberta, not CMS Hat customers, get it back in what's called a rate rider.
A rose should smell as sweet by any other name. Thank you.
So I'll move on to carbon costs. I'll start just by, on the right, we show our carbon compliance costs from 2021 to 2024. We've gone from 4.9 million, we peaked at 11.1 million in 2023, and in 2024, our carbon costs dropped to 6.3 million. The reason for this drop, the market price for carbon offsets, which is a way that we are able to meet our obligation, is by using carbon offset credits. Sorry, I'll step back. There's two ways to meet your carbon obligation. You can either pay into what's called the tech fund. That's a predefined rate by the government, or you can use what's called emission offset credits. The price for the emission offset credits has dropped, and also the amount that you're able to use has increased. So that's why we've seen a drop in our carbon obligations over the last year. The other thing that affects it is the benchmark. Every year, that benchmark of the emissions target you have to meet drops by about 2% every year. So every year, it gets harder and harder to meet that. And our units, being slightly older units, we are at a higher ton per megawatt hour than the benchmark. So we are always paying a carbon obligation, and that benchmark is tightening. But I do want to highlight on the left, you can see the tier fund is the solid line, and you can see it increasing $15 every year. And as of now, the provincial government has capped it at $90. The jagged line is actually the offset pricing. So you can see it followed that tier fund very closely until recently, where it's diverged and dropped off due to some oversupply in the market. So that has become the most economical way to meet your carbon obligation. And I think next year we can use up to 90% of carbon offsets. So we do anticipate that price, or our obligation, staying lower than what it's seen in 2023.
Question from Councillor Hellman.
Thank you, through the chair. So is this, the carbon costs, is this provincial or federal?
So there is a federal carbon policy. However, the province can put in their own carbon system, which is what Alberta has, as long as it's as stringent as the federal system. So we do have a provincial system. It's called TIER, and it is Alberta. It is an Alberta system that we comply to.
So the money collected goes to the provincial government?
And then it's given back through given back to energy efficiency projects. You have to apply, and you can get funds through, I forget the exact name, Michelle might know it offhand, but you can apply and get some of the funds from what they've collected.
So would you think, like, what percentage, say, when we paid that $11.1 million in 2023, what percentage of that do you think we would get back as a municipality?
We don't necessarily get any back. It's only if you have an energy efficiency project, you can apply to get money back for that. But in that 11.1, I think that year we could use 60% offsets, but the offsets were close to the tier fund price at that time. But so we'd have paid probably 40% at that tier fund price that would have went into the, like I said, I'm forgetting the name of the fund that gets the tier funds and then administrates it to energy efficient projects.
Okay, thank you.
So just an overview of the previously approved 2026 budget. I know you guys had discussed this a little bit in Jared's presentation. On an EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, we had budgeted in the fall of 2024 that in 2026 we would make 39.6 million EBITDA for this business unit. Lastly, on the electric side of things, just wanted to highlight maintenance capital that was also discussed. So the electric generation business has significant maintenance and capital requirements. The major maintenance is usually tied to run hours on our machines, typically at 25,000 and 50,000 hour intervals. At 25,000 hours, the engine requires what's called a hot section. It's the replacement of the hot engine combustion portion of the turbine, and that typically costs $7 to $8 million. At the 50,000 hour interval, it typically requires a full engine replacement, and that can run between $12 and $13 million. Those prices have gone up significantly over the past few years for both of those items. It's also worth mentioning the engines must be sent away to the US, and this can take many months to get the engine back. And typically, there's additional found work when you send the engine away that can cost additional funds. To manage this, we do carry spares. We do have a spare 6000, LM 6000 and LM 2500 to help so that there's not an outage time. We can input this engine in about 4 days and then send the engine back for replacement and get it back into our fleet in that time frame.
Councillor Varga?
Just a question through the chair. Where are we at in that maintenance schedule? Are we close to where we have to do it, or is it a year out? Because I think I calculated at 25K, it's 2.8 years, and at 50K, it's 5.7 years. So where are we at in that schedule?
So a few things. It all depends on the hours it runs per year. So in a very low price market, there might be some of our assets that are only running 2,000 or 3,000 hours a year. Typically, our peaking assets would be the last ones to come on. Then we do have the base loaded generation assets at the main plant. All the units are at different intervals. I think we just did, I think our unit 17 has 4,000 hours. I won't know them all offhand. So we try and obviously manage it so that they're not all coming up at the same time. So if we do an engine replacement, we can put our spare in that one and then have our spare back by the time the next engine replacement comes.
So that's 6 engines that we're usually doing that maintenance on, I take it. Is that what it is, 6?
Yeah, we have
4 at the main plant and 2 at the other one.
Yeah, 2 LM 6000s at the main plant and 2 LM 2500s at the main plant, and then 2 LM 6000s at the remote site.
So it's ongoing?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
okay.
for sure. Clicker is no longer working. Can you adjust the slides for me? So onto the natural gas side. Just a few things to highlight. Our non-natural gas exemption, we have what's called the Medicine Hat Gas Agreement, which grants us exclusivity to the city of Medicine Hat to drill and produce natural gas within our franchise area. As I mentioned earlier, the exclusivity does not extend to the retail. Secondly, there's an order in council related to Section 71 of the MGA, which allows the city of Medicine Hat to acquire mines and minerals interests if related to or in connection with the operation of our gas utility. The last line mentions Allied Oil and Gas, which has been wrapped up. So gas production and retail. Our gas production has diminished. We now have about 10,000 GJs a day. The remainder of our load is served by our connection to Nova Gas Transmission, which we have about 87,000 GJs a day of delivery contracts. Gas retail does flow through the gas production statements, include sales to retail and gas purchases to serve the city load. I think it was mentioned earlier, but gas production has significant abandonment and reclamation obligations, estimated at a present value of $138 million. However, the AR reserve is currently only $75 million for citywide obligations. And it's important to note that there are ongoing abandonment operational costs until a reclamation certificate is received. So when a well is shut in, there's still costs on that well for approximately 5 to 7 years while we go to achieve that reclamation certificate. So where are we now on the abandonments? We continue to complete abandonment, environmental cleanup, and reclamation on sites in both Alberta and Saskatchewan. We currently have about 2,900 sites, 650 that are actively producing, 2,250 inactive or shut in that are waiting abandonment. Of the 22,250, 100 are remaining downhole abandonments, and all 2,250 still require surface environmental cleanup. As of 2024, the city has received 442 rec certs and disposed of approximately 3,125 wells. The city is continuing to look at divestiture opportunities for existing production wells if it makes economic sense. And then over the next 10 years, gas production is hoping to reduce the current inventory of the shut-in or suspended wells by 90%. So this shows the operating budget for the gas production business unit. As I mentioned, the EBITDA for this business unit is minus $6.1 million. But it is important to know there is those ongoing abandonment costs that are also in the operating costs. So that doesn't just show what we're making on our producing wells. It also does include some of those ongoing operating expenses from the Arrow program. And then to sum it all up, the EBITDA for the energy production business units was expected to be $33.5 million in 2026. I think that's all the slides. I do have some on retail, but I'm not sure if we need to go there unless there's any other questions.
Does anyone have any burning questions on our retail business? No? Any other questions? Councillor Young?
Sorry, I was going to ask a question, and I think you might have answered it, but I keep hearing we have 75 million in our fund for well recovery, but our total that we're estimating is 130. And the timeline on that, so are we at like a dire straits here where we're down whatever, $55, $60 million, and we have to make that up right now? Do we have 10 years to make that up? And then it sounds like some of those expenses are in your operating budget. So to pay for those wells, are we pulling money out of that 75 million every year to pay for a section of these abandoned wells, or how does that work?
I'll answer a few and maybe let Lola chime in with what I've missed. But just to clarify, the operating costs for the Arrow are just the operating costs for, say, land leases while we're still working on that well. The actual capital to do the actual work is the actual capital expense. So we haven't touched the Arrow fund. It's just being set up now. So that 75 million is what we have. Our net present value of the total obligation is 138 million. We are looking at different strategies to, mitigate that cost if possible, or how we potentially could increase that fund.
Again, the great answer from Travis. Just to add, that is spread out over a period of years. So we're not doing the abandonments tomorrow or next year, but it is spread out, I'm going to say 10 to 15 years perhaps. And then there's also that delay when we do the reclamation. So doing, the cut and cap, the downhole work is done immediately, and then we have to wait a period of, to get that reclamation certificate. So that can delay that as well.
Just to follow up, are we, when do we have to abandon them?
I don't know that there's a specific time frame that we have to abandon, but obviously if the well is not producing, the quicker we can get those operating costs off our book, the more beneficial. So we do try and get to some wells. Obviously, there's a certain amount of work that we can only do in 1 year and availability of contractors, so that also affects our schedule.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
That's it. All right, thank you very much, Director Tuchscherer. Does anyone have any questions about any of the presentations? No? Oh, Counselor Varga?
Can we, if we do have some questions, can we ask them after the fact? Like if something does come up, once we read this a little bit over again, that if we do have some questions, that we can get in contact with you and do some of that, or through our city manager?
Yeah, so the best would be to go through myself, and then, because if someone has a question, everyone has a question. So it would be advantageous to send it out to everyone. So you're more than welcome to ask questions, and the awesome team will figure that out.
Thank you. Counselor Hellman?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. I just had one more quick question for you about the carbon costs there that go to the province, and you mentioned that perhaps if we had green projects or something like that in the future, that we could get some of that money back. Would that apply in any meaningful way to a solar project, do you know?
I think that fund does not provide funds to solar. What the federal government has done is set up what's called an investment tax credit, which we will look into for the Samus Solar Project as a potential source of funds. I will say though, on Unit 17, we were able to receive some funds that I can't remember the exact amount. I think it was around $4 million for that project through that fund.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't see any other questions, and we have no further business on the agenda. Any objections to adjourning? All right, this meeting is adjourned at 8:51 p.m. on November 10th, 2025. Our next city council meeting is November 17th, 2025. Thank you. At 4 p.m. The meeting is adjourned.